I'm Edward Enninful, and welcome to Vogue Visionaries. We established this series to offer inspiration and practical advice to those looking to break into the creative industries, something we know has been incredibly difficult in the context of the last year. We've developed Visionaries in partnership with YouTube, a platform that many of you go to learn new skills and build creative careers. We hope this class is a step towards a bright and brilliant future.
Hi, this is Sam McKnight, and this is Vogue Visionaries. I'm a hairdresser who works in the fashion business, and a few of my career highlights would be beginning to work for Vogue in the 1970s, now being a contributing beauty editor of Vogue with Edward in 2020s, and working with all the supermodels from the beginning, working with Princess Diana, and meeting lots of incredible people. This is a recreation of a wig we did for Lady Gaga when she did a Mugler show. There are 5 chapters, and you can skip to any chapter you like using the time bar below. In this class, we'll explore how to get started in your career, some key products you'll need in your kit and how I use them, creating some iconic looks, the importance of building relationships and establishing a team, and some of the key lessons I have learned. I was brought up in a mining community in the country, in the south of Scotland. My first memory of hair was being kind of astounded by David Bowie's look on Top of the Pops in the early 1970s. That was my first wow moment, I guess, and that's kind of stayed with me ever since then. And I was at college there then, training to be a teacher, and I really didn't have any money, so from kind of those days when we all got into hair when we were going out on a Saturday night and emulating David Bowie and the like, I found a job in a hairdressing salon at the weekends, and very quickly that became my full-time job. And I had seen from working in other salons and going out clubbing that all the work on the top magazines was being done by people mainly from Molton Brown. So I wanted to work there, and I set that as my goal, and I went and somehow blagged a job there. It was the salon it was around the corner from Vogue House at South Molton Street, and South Molton Street was the coolest street in town. And all the Vogue editors used to come there to get their hair done. And so all the stylists from there used to do the photo shoots. Now, at that time, there wasn't really such a thing as a session hairdresser. It was, they would use people from the salons on photo shoots, because to be honest, there weren't very many magazines and there weren't that many photo shoots going on. It wasn't like it is today. It was a very, very small niche industry. In 1980, I took a huge leap, which you do when you're young. I decided I didn't want to work in the salon anymore. I wanted to concentrate on photo shoots because I could see that this industry was growing. I could see there was more and more demand. I would often be on a shoot just by myself. I wouldn't have an assistant. The teams were tiny. That has changed. So now sometimes there's multiple models on a shoot. Sometimes you have 6, 10 models on a shoot. I think the first shows I did, I think I probably had 4 assistants or something, because there would be 10 models. You know, the scale of things has changed. There's a more direct route to doing what I do now. And that would be trying to get on the team of someone like myself, because the teams are much bigger now, so we need more people, and try to get yourself a position, even if it's holding pins, and you may have to do that at the beginning. There's a whole network out there of assistants who crisscross teams too. So be aware of that and be looking at who's assisting who and whose teams you might want to be on, and yeah, just focus and leave the lead stylist's assistants messages. So just network, and social media has made it much easier to do that now. What I'm looking for in a new team member is someone who's not afraid of hard work, someone who really isn't afraid to be picking up the old extensions from the floor. And then it moves on to someone who we can develop their artistry and their creativity, but it needs to be all of those things. Well, the easiest way to get started is to practice on your friends. Just really annoy them into the ground. And they'll probably love you for it too. There are quite a few things that I think every hairdresser should have in their kit. And I'm going to show you just a small selection of those. I used this on the Fendi Spring Summer show that was shown in September for doing the hair rolls. It finished them off really beautifully. It's called Cot Grease, and the packaging is really fantastic, and I can put a ton of that on and it washes out really quickly and easily. It's really good to have dry paste in your kit too. So I used this Magic Move finishing cream on the recent Balmain show that was shown in September, just to break up the waves and make it a little lived in. If you put a normal sectioning clip in there, you get a dent in it, and this will stop it from denting. And we went a step further and we made our own. What I did was I took pictures of the flowers in my garden, we printed them onto cards. So we kind of just clip that onto the hair, and it'll keep it really flat at the side of the head, and instead of it denting or moving. You might need to do a little trim on the fringe, and the makeup artist is going to hate you. But what you do is you whip one of these out and it goes under the fringe, and then the hair gets trimmed across the front like that. So this is the fringe, and imagine that goes under the fringe, and then your scissors can just sort of glide along. Does that make sense? Your scissors can glide along that, and then there's no hair going to go on the face, and the makeup artists are going to just think you're God. We did a Fendi show with sort of green toupees once a few years ago, and I'm not averse to trying things on myself and playing around with them. We use Japanese scissors, and the guy from Japan comes and they get sharpened, and so long as they're sharp and well oiled and well looked after, I don't really care. So long as they do the trick, whatever scissors you're comfortable with and are easy for you to hold, they're the scissors you should be using. But I think a few pairs of sharp scissors is essential in your kit. I think a good way to stay calm under pressure backstage is not to let anyone else's uncalm affect you. I'm quite a calm person in that situation. And I think it's important to have a calm team around you. But I think not getting into anyone else's hysteria is really important. If you feel that affecting you, shut down a little, shy away from it. Don't get sucked into it. It's also important as a hairstylist to be able to move quickly, to change something really quickly, and maybe show someone in the mirror, what if we do something like this? What if we do something like this? Maybe have a couple of reference pictures. I wouldn't be doing big mood boards because that's too confusing. I mean, I've seen some mood boards that go from, bald heads to big afros all on the same mood board, which makes it not a mood board. So for me, I would kind of get a couple of references and say, how about we do something like this, and but be able to change it really quickly into something else so that everyone can be on board with it, because you really want your model to be loving how she looks. You don't want to have someone who hates the way they look being photographed, because that ain't gonna work. A technique I often use is, I think we call it rick-racking. It's about taking a pin, actually I should spray the hair first, making the hair frizzy from straight to frizz. Taking a large pin and winding the hair around it in figures of 8. So you'll get very small, quite tight, almost braid-like creatures. And then I take a hair grip and push it up the middle to hold it, so you get that. Apply some heat to this. This is a look I last did on Kate Moss in the March issue of British Vogue. And Edward and Matt Marcus had an idea to keep the kind of feeling of Virginia Woolf and Vita Sackville West. Keep that slightly frizzed out feeling with an updo. There's something that was kind of falling apart, falling down. After it's been set, you want to brush it out with a wide tooth comb. I always start at the ends and brush up. With Kate, actually, we do a wig wrap. We do a wrap, a hair wrap, or you could do small braids to make the head very, very small, tight and compact close to the head. And then we put a stocking cap over the top, and then the wig gets pinned onto the stocking cap. And then with Kate's hair, it went up in the back. And this whole front area becomes almost like a sort of big frizzy quiff. So then it's all about framing the face with it and maybe making it a little narrow on the sides or making it bigger on the sides with a bit of spray to sort of set it into shape. So this is a recreation of a wig we did for Lady Gaga when she did a Mugler show. These were for a show for Fendi a couple of seasons ago in Rome, where we did 54 wigs, one for each year of Karl Lagerfeld's Fendi shows. They're human hair wigs. They were all hand-colored to exactly match the swatches of the outfit. So some of them are two tones because the outfits were two tones. So I wanted it to be really complementary. I wanted it to be really sort of matchy-matchy, which we'd never really done with hair before. Color is a really important part of styling nowadays, much more than it ever was before. The yellow is just a very simple classic roller set, but it's in an acid yellow color. We did a shoot for Vogue a few years ago, and on Linnaeus, the model. And these are all pieces of wigs that we kind of cut up and did a patchwork. This was a recreation of a look we had done at Versailles for Chanel. I was kind of inspired a bit by Lady Gaga, the way she wore wigs on her head and with her own hair underneath, and it was why she might wear 3 wigs at the same time. So I thought to make it modern, we would do these sort of pastel colored bobs, but I would chop them up, like literally hack them with scissors to make them look like a little bit punky. Carl had these beautiful bows made, so we just did the girl's own hair in simple ponytails in the back and finished it off with a gorgeous bow. So the whole wig thing just became like a hat. I think one of the most difficult things to master is natural hair and makeup. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is come to that point where you think, no, that's enough. I'm going to step back now, and that's enough. And I think that applies for makeup too. The first time I met the Princess of Wales was on a shoot. This sort of leggy blonde comes bouncing up the stairs and sticks a hand out and introduces, smiled and made us all melt. And it was Princess Diana. And Anna Harvey, who was an editor at Vogue at that time, was working with the princess on her clothes. And so Anna introduced us, and we had a really lovely day. And we were doing official portraits for the magazine, and she wore a tiara, and I made her hair look short under the tiara. This is 1990. I made it look short with the tiara. I faked it a bit, and at the end of the day, she said, actually, the famous picture of that is the one where she's sitting on the ground, holding her knees in a white satin ball gown, and with a big laugh on her face, because we laughed so much. She was very funny. But at the end of the day, she said, "What would you do with my hair if I just said do anything?" I said, "I would cut it all off and start again," because it was the beginning of the 90s, and it was at the time when I was doing lots of shows and covers and a lot of the girls had short hair. And we were kind of moving from the sort of big frou-frou 80s into the sort of sharp, more androgynous sort of business chic of the 90s. So she said, "Well, why don't you just cut it off now?" So I cut it off then, and we never looked back. That was it for a few years. I've probably got a good 120, 130 British Vogue covers, and I'm going to just go through a few of my favorites here. This one, there's a little doggy up there, I'll cover that bit. This one of Princess Diana, it wasn't actually supposed to be a cover. She was so proud of when she saw the Polaroid because she had stopped biting her nails. So you could see these lovely, lovely nails in the picture. And she was so chuffed with that. And we managed to, between Liz and Anna Harvey and myself, we kind of managed to persuade her to be on the cover, to allow them to use the picture. So that has very fond memories. It's a kind of it's a classic sort of cover, and the black polo neck makes it so simple, and it was a very special time for all of us. One of my other favorites is the Millennium Vogue cover of the Divine Miss Moss. Sometimes the simple things are the best, aren't they? You know, it's I haven't seen this cover for ages. It's a beautiful Nick Knight, very detailed, almost Victorian cameo shot. And this was never supposed to be a cover either. Sometimes the best covers are like that. And I think this was, I think Nick was just trying out some lighting, and we just kind of threw Kate on the set. And I said, well, what should we do with the hair? Oh, just keep it really natural. And I think at the time, the sort of messy bun was a kind of thing to make the girls look like the hair had done it themselves. And I think it's become an actual timeless image, really. And looks really rich with the gold background. One of my other favorites is from a year ago, well, almost a year ago, it was June, with Dame Judy. Once she had got used to me sort of playing with the hair for 5 minutes, she asked me to cut it a little bit, which I was thrilled about. I did a book of my work about 4 years ago, and going through those images and these images it's a journey through time, and it's quite emotional sometimes, because what comes back to you when you see an image like this is what happened on the day, who you were with. Did you have a great time? Did you have a nice time? Did you not have a good time at all? And all different things and different emotions. And sometimes if the person's no longer with us, that comes back, and you start to, an image can conjure up such memories, really. And I have very special memories of this cover. Emma. From one Princess Diana to another. I remember that day. That was my first job after the first lockdown in summer. And I remember when the job came in, I wasn't quite sure that I was the right person to do this. I was a bit, I just wasn't sure that it was the right thing for me to do. It felt weird. And then I thought, okay, just get over yourself. This is ridiculous. You've got too much time to think about it. And actually, it was a pleasure, and Emma was a pleasure. And I was quite taken by how alike Emma was to Princess Diana in her looks. And she was such a lovely girl that any sort of doubts and fears were laid. And I think the pictures are great. It's a great cover. I think a really important part of the process is those 2 to 3 hours that your subject, your model or your celebrity sits in the dressing room in your chair. She or he is, raw. It's first thing in the morning. There's a process of getting that person into the character they're going to be for the day. And sometimes if you feel a little resistance from that, for me, it's important not to push. It's important to allow things to be organic. And if there's a slight resistance to hair, you may suggest doing the makeup first. And if there's an idea of a wig, then have a few wigs ready, so you can just pop them on when the makeup's done. It will take, even Kate Moss, it will take Kate 2 hours in hair and makeup, early in the morning to become Kate Moss. She doesn't roll out of bed and she's Kate Moss on the cover of a magazine. It will be a process of whichever Kate Moss she's going to be that day. There's, because as we know, there are many versions of each model. So whoever that model is going to be that day is a process that begins in your hair and makeup room with you touching them and talking to them and easing them into a certain role. Most times, an iconic image will be a moment, and that moment comes together because of the people in the room, because of the energy in the room. It's about the energy. To see my own work turn into a Vogue shoot or a Vogue cover is still incredibly exciting and incredibly powerful. So that, to me, is the ultimate buzz, really. There were a couple of people who really helped me in my early career. This was the late 70s. I got sent out on my first jobs for British Vogue very early on in my career. And I was really new. I didn't know anything. I was really nervous. But two people were really kind. Well, everyone was really kind, but two people in particular, Anna Harvey, who was a fashion editor at British Vogue, and Liz Tilberis. Liz went on to be an icon in her own right. And Anna went on to start most of the foreign editions of Vogue Russia, Vogue Greece, and became an integral part of the Vogue machine. And in retrospect, there were people who didn't mind nurturing a novice. And I think for me, I picked that up, and now I think it's important for me to do the same. I mean, many of my assistants are doing really well on their own now. Like Nicola Clark, Eamon Hughes, and many, many more. It's important for you to nurture your own assistants too. I learned that from these lovely ladies early on. That's the important thing about finding your teams and finding the people that you work really well with, because if there's something not right in that, then you might not be exploiting your talents to their full potential. So be in teams that appreciate you and teams that you appreciate. If a photo shoot or a show or something, if something hasn't worked out and it hasn't been the end result that everyone was after, then the simple thing is to remove yourself from that team. There are some people who are doing things differently these days that I really admire. And one is Stuart, Haircuts for the Homeless, his Instagram. And he literally does haircuts for the homeless. And he has set up a whole system where hairdressers can donate their time all over the country. And there's a guy called Joshua Coombs who does it internationally. So for me, people like that who are really giving something back and allowing us to do the same thing, to be part of that, I found that incredibly humbling and inspiring. And my friend Joe Jones and Sally Hughes started 2 or 3 years ago a charity called Beauty Banks, because they discovered that as well as food banks, there was a need for shampoo, hygiene products, tampons among the needy. I have total admiration for that, because we get stuck in our fashion bubble. And yes, we do things for charity, quite a lot of stuff for charity. I mean, I sold all my old 80s clothes a couple of years ago in auction and gave the money to beauty banks. It's something that is incredibly good for the soul. I had one moment in the 90s when my mum doesn't really understand what I do. My mum doesn't buy magazines, or she's not aware of this world, So I remember Princess Diana was opening a factory, or she had gone to visit a factory near where my mum lived in a village in Scotland. And my mum and her friends were standing outside. And she had never met my mum before. So I think the story goes, one of my mum's friends shouted out, "This is Sam's mum." And for some reason, the princess, knew exactly who she was talking about and went over and spoke to her. And that made my mum's day. And I think for me, that was probably the most pride I've ever felt in my job. The thing about doing hair is you're learning a skill. And I think it's really important to learn a skill. And for me, learning that skill at a really young age, from a very, very humble beginnings, has brought me to places I never imagined I would be. I find myself sitting there kind of with a smile on my face thinking, the only thing that brought me here is my work. That's what's brought me here. So it's a fantastic opportunity if you want to take that and grasp it. One of the highlights of my career has been watching the business grow from the beginning when hardly anyone did this job to now when there are literally hundreds of people doing this job. And being there at the beginning and still being there at this time and still inspiring young people has been really important to me. I don't think there's anything I would have done differently, because if I'd done something differently, it wouldn't have brought me here today. You know, it may have taken you on another route. I think what I would say to people is grasp every opportunity. I think that's what I have done my whole career, is looked at everything as an opportunity. There was the same ways I'm looking at this pandemic is, at the beginning, I thought, okay, this is not going to be a disaster. It's going to be an opportunity. And I think we all have to look at life like that. We have to take any negativity as an opportunity. My bit of advice would be resilience and reinvention. Constantly reinvent yourself, constantly challenge yourself, constantly jump out your comfort zone. It's that kind of reinventing yourself things that will keep it going longer. Don't be afraid to do that. I'm Sam McKnight. Thank you for watching my Vogue Visionaries. I thoroughly enjoyed doing it, and I hope you enjoyed watching it.